thanks everyone for being here for the August Sustainability Series. We'll get started here. Just a couple of logistical items. So as the speakers are working through their content, if you wouldn't mind typing the questions in the chat, and we'll try to find a natural pause in the presentation to kind of bring it up with Pete, that'd be great. We do have plenty of time for questions at the end as well. So if there's things that might not be totally relevant to the material, we'll make sure we have time to address those as well. Afterwards, our plan has been and will be to share the slides and recording of the presentation from today, so everyone has this information at their fingertips. So we'll plan on doing that. But otherwise, my plan is to get out of the way and introduce Pete Lindstrom from the Clean Energy Resource Teams. And he has an exciting presentation today to talk about some of the solar opportunities for folks here in Rochester and the financial pathways that they have available to them as well. So with that in mind, welcome, Pete. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be here. And we were joking right before we started here that the title here is Bright Future Ahead for Rochester. And I didn't even put two and two together that we're talking to Mr. Kevin Bright. So no pun intended there, but it definitely is a bright future. So I will launch into my presentation here, but I'll also say I'm coming to you live from my backyard, and I've got some nice solar panels there in the background. I also have some nice flowers here too, and I got stung by a bee the other day. So if I all of a sudden screech out, that's probably one of the reasons. But if you hear other sorts of strange noises in the background, I have 4 chickens that are wandering my backyard at this particular moment too. So you may hear some chicken noises back there too. So thanks again for having me. I plan to talk about these items over the next 20, 25 minutes, half hour, maybe or so. Talk a little bit about the organization that I'm a part of, the Clean Energy Resource Teams. Got to slip in a little bit of a message about energy efficiency, and then cover some tools that folks in Rochester can use for solar on your home or for solar on your business. And then how to pay for it. That's the frequently asked question. Is this sounds good, but gosh, it's a big purchase, and how am I going to make this happen for my home or for my business? And then I look forward to the Q&A as well. So just a minute on CERTs. We're kind of a goofy organization in that we're not exactly a for-profit entity, nor are we a nonprofit. We are what's called a partnership organization, and we have 4 main partners. Those are the Great Plains Institute. They're a nonprofit in the Twin Cities that focuses on these type of issues. We have the Southwest Regional Development Commission in Slayton. And our third partner is the state of Minnesota. And our fourth and final partner is the University of Minnesota. And that's typically where I would be working out of, the St. Paul campus of the U of M, when I'm not in my backyard. And we have a real straightforward mission to help communities, individuals and communities do clean energy projects all across the state. We are a statewide organization. We have regional coordinators in 7 different areas of the state, including in the Southeast. Chris Meyer is our fantastic regional coordinator. And we've been around for about 20 years, give or take. So not a brand new organization. We've been around the block a little bit, and proud of the accomplishments that we've completed over the years. So anytime I'm talking about solar, I have to slip in a little bit of a message about energy efficiency, whether that or not that's for your home or your business. And I want to start by saying we've got some amazing guides, really just throughout this whole presentation, darn near everything that I'm going to talk about, we have information online. And so uh, our CERT's website is chock full of great information. So each one of these tools is either on the CERT's website, or you can find links to these tools, to these resources on the CERT's website, including these great energy guides. We have energy guides for single family homes, for manufactured home owners, for renters, for landlords. And in these guides, it's really like a energy efficiency 101. It's what to look for when you're buying a home, understanding your utility bill, simple steps for saving energy, and really high-level information about energy assistance and weatherization, and the cold weather rule that utilities have to follow, things of that nature to help you if you're a homeowner or a manufactured homeowner, a renter, or a landlord. And the good thing is we have these in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Somali. So please utilize them. And if you know of places that could benefit from these energy guides, we'd certainly appreciate you helping to get the word out that they exist and that they are available to be downloaded. The other point I want to make is for energy efficiency and solar is energy audits, and the importance of getting an energy audit for your home or for your business. And really, whatever the project might be, again, energy efficiency or renewables, we always encourage folks to contact their local utility, Rochester Public Utilities in this case, to learn about what sort of programs they might be able to tap into, to learn about what sort of rebates might be available. And my understanding is RPU has what they call, I believe, the Neighborhood Energy Challenge, where they pull people together. They have events, free events, and then from those you can sign up for an energy audit at your home, where an energy professional will run a diagnostics on your home. And I've had this done a few different times for my home, and I will tell you, you learn all sorts of interesting things about oh gosh, like they call them energy vampires, things that are sucking up energy even when you don't even know it, or low cost, no cost things that you can do in your home or business to lower that utility bill. There is, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, a one-time fee of $50 for RPU to conduct this service. But I also saw online that they have some upcoming events for you to go to. September 15th at 6:30 and November 19th at 10 a.m. at Northrop Community Education Center. So that's worth checking out. And then I also wanted to mention that the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce for businesses, they have their Energy Smart program. That's a free energy audit. If you're a nonprofit, there's an entity out there called Interchange, and they provide free energy audits. And then last but not least, the state of Minnesota runs a program called the Retired Environmental Technical Assistance Program, or RETAP. And their whole mission is to provide energy audits for nonprofits and small and medium-sized businesses. So there's really no excuse not to get an audit. And the one I didn't mention is EQIP, and that's for farmers. All right, let's dive into solar for homes and businesses. Lots of great tools out there. And the first one, again, online on the CERT's website, is just like a one-stop shop 8 steps for putting solar on your home or your business. It's just all in one place. A guide for solar, and we have these guides that are broken out for homeowners, a guide for farms, and a guide for businesses. And it's really, like I said, like a solar 101, where you can just get solar information, some myth busting, learn some information about site assessments, the different components that go into a solar system, some information about what might be the right size for your array, and some tips for hiring an installer, and some considerations for things like operations and maintenance. So that's my number one tool right there. And then my other one is another frequently asked question is, well, gosh, is my site good for solar in the first place? We're way up here in Minnesota. Is Minnesota really a good spot for solar? And what I learned working at the clean energy resource teams is that Minnesota, some places in Minnesota have just as good of a solar resource as places in Florida and places in Texas. And so, yes, absolutely. Minnesota can be a good spot, but people are curious about their specific spot. And so we point them towards the Minnesota Solar Suitability app, where folks can just punch in their address and it'll pull up something like that. And you can print out a nice report about the solar suitability of that particular spot. Typically, you want well, you see in that lower left-hand corner there that the percentage of solar in this particular location is 84%. I think the rule of thumb is you wanted at least 70% or more for it to be a good spot. So you can see this particular spot, nice and bright, nice and sunny, 84%. It's a good site for solar. And from here, you can learn about what sort of installers may be available, or what sort of rebates may be available. So that's the solar suitability app. Another good one is Google Project Sunroof. Works in a similar way. This one just is a little bit more Minnesota focused, but either one will do the trick. Another frequently asked question is, well, gosh, who do I hire? And we have on our website a solar directory. What's nice about this is you can sort it by installers that do just homeowners, or just commercial, or installers that do both. And then you can also sort it to show installers that are closest to you. So wherever your location is around the state. So Rochester, I know I just did this an hour ago. There's one installer on our directory in the city of Rochester, and there's, I think, 5 or 6 that are in the general area of Southeast Minnesota. So you can have some options, which is always good. And that is always one of my recommendations, is to get at least 3 quotes from people, and references. Get references from the folks, the installers that you're talking to. Get at least 3 quotes. Ask your friends and neighbors who they have used, and get advice from those folks about lessons learned and best practices. But online here, we've got some questions that you can use as starter conversations for the installers that you're talking to. I won't go through um, all of them, other than to say one of the things that we call out, I'm just going to back up a second. One of the things that we call out on our solar directory is whether or not that installer is NAPCEP certified. And you'll see that on number 6 here in the questions to ask. NAPCEP certified. It's oh my gosh, what does NAPCEP stand for? National Association blah, 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 Board Certified Energy Professional, something along those lines. That might not be exactly, but what it is, but it's essentially it's the good housekeeping seal of approval for solar installers. It tells people that they have gone through extensive training around solar installation. So that is definitely something to look out for. The other thing, so these are questions that you are asking a potential installer, but also you should be asking yourself some questions around energy usage in your home. Think about any sort of significant increases in energy that you may be setting yourself up for in the year or years ahead, thinking like, will I be purchasing an electric vehicle that I will be charging at home in the next year or so? Will I be doing any sort of major energy efficiency improvements that will dramatically lower my consumption at my own home? These types of questions, the answer to these questions will help with the sizing of the array that you want. Another frequently asked question is, well, gosh, how much is this going to cost, and what's the payback? And we have a calculator online, a real simple calculator, Excel calculator. You don't need to be a Excel whiz kid to use this, and you just have to punch in data on the amount of kilowatt hours that you use on a monthly basis. The average Minnesotan uses around 800 kilowatt hours per month, and you can find that information on your bill, how much you pay your utility, and then how much electricity you wish the solar array to cover. 50%, 75%, 100%. Punch in these numbers, and this calculator will automatically provide the system size that would work for you, the general cost estimate, ballpark cost estimate, and then what the payback will be for with the tax credit, and I'll cover tax credits in a minute here. What the payback will be with tax credits, what the payback will be with other sorts of incentives, for example, a utility rebate, and things of that nature. So a really helpful tool, just a guideline. Nothing rock solid, but just give you a general guideline of system size, payback, and what the costs may be. One way to help lower that cost is through group purchasing, group procurement. And there's 2 entities out there that their bread and butter is group purchasing. One is Solar United Neighbors, or SUN, and the second is Midwest Renewable Energy Society. But both are, you know what? I think that should be Midwest Renewable Energy Association. There are 2 different groups out there with similar names, but Midwest Renewable Energy Association, MREA, has group purchasing. Both fantastic. Some differences, but lots of similarities as well. In fact, Sun, Solar United Neighbors, ran a Rochester group purchasing. I think it was back in 2018. And so it's probably ripe to do another group purchasing again. But the reason why I say these are good ways to go is because, number one, when you're approaching an installer and you have 20 of your neighbors that are all on board, that dramatically lowers the installer's cost to go out and find 20 different customers. And so that installer is able to give you a group purchasing discount. And the other good thing about these group purchasing arrangements is that you're all learning together. These are big investments. You can drop 15, 20, 25, $30,000 or more on a solar array. So significant investment, and you really want to make sure you know what you're doing. And the fact that you're all sitting around a table together in person or virtually and learning together is really advantageous. So Solar United Neighbors, Midwest Renewable Energy Association, two good group purchasing. Sometimes cities lead these efforts. So the city could not be invested financially, but just serve as a way to help get the word out on the group purchasing, or serve as a meeting spot. These types of ways for city involvement. You could also do it through a faith community, or really any other sort of community-oriented group. That's group purchasing. Let's talk about how to pay for it. There's some good news here. I just really want to, which is always good. I want to cover for just a second a grant program that's offered through the federal government called the Rural Energy for America program. And the reason why I just want to cover it for a second is that it is not available in Rochester. However, if you're dialing in from just outside city limits, this may be available for you. And it's up to 25% grant from Uncle Sam for renewable energy projects, primarily aimed at farms and businesses is what it's for. But if you are in Rochester, RPU does have a solar rebate incentive. I believe it's $500 flat incentive for solar arrays. So that's good. It's on a first come, first serve basis. So good to get your application in as soon as you can. And then brand spanking new information is the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act. And this is big news. I don't pretend to be a great expert on this yet, but for the longest time, there's been a federal tax credit for solar. It was at 30%. This year, it's dropped down to 26%. I believe it was scheduled to drop down to 22% next year. With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, Congress has set in stone a 30% federal tax credit for the next decade for residential renewable energy projects. That is a huge commitment from the feds. On the commercial side of things, it's also 30% for the next 3 years till 2025. And then it gets a little squishy. I think they said something along the lines of that could remain at 30% It's contingent on whether the federal government determines that carbon reduction goals have been met. So also for commercial projects, they are there are a number of adders to that 30%. So it could be more than 30%. So for example, you get a 10% adder if you meet what they call domestic content standards. So if it's made in America, those solar panels, solar components are made in America, there's an adder, 10% adder. If you are citing these projects in energy communities, you get another 10% adder. So these are communities that have brownfield sites or have coal plant closures. Then you could get an additional incentive. If you are locating these arrays in low-income communities, again, another 10% adder for that. 10% adder for low-income communities or tribal lands. 20% adder if the solar is going on a low-income residential building project. So 50% tax credit for low-income apartment complexes, for example. Pretty darn hefty. And so that's very encouraging to see, and I'm sure that's going to spark a lot of interest. Let's talk about loans. For residential solar, the Center for Energy and Environment has a really great loan program for these types of projects. Up to $75,000 should cover a pretty decent size array. A variety of different terms from 5 years. I think they have a 10-year term and a 15-year term, and then interest rates that are pretty competitive as well. Also on the residential side, there's a couple of credit unions that have got together for what they call the CU credit union green loans. And these are loans especially for solar. The two credit unions are Highway Credit Union and Affinity Plus Credit Union. They've pre-qualified 3 installers that they like to work with for these types of loans. And again, just like the CEE loan program, a variety of different interest rates and terms. Interest rates generally in the 3 to 4%, and terms as long as 15 years. So that's worth exploring as well. I also wanted to mention solar leasing for residential and for commercial. I'm most familiar with this being used on the commercial or nonprofit side of things. Very similar to leasing a car in that the solar array is owned by a third-party corporation, and they are able to use the tax credits and other tax incentives like accelerated depreciation. The benefit of a solar lease is that, as I mentioned, these are spendy projects, even with the tax credits and rebates. So with the solar lease, there's no upfront payment, no upfront costs. It's owned by someone else, so they're in charge of maintenance. And then my understanding is they typically charge a flat monthly rate. And so you'll be charged, if it's a commercial entity, say $500 a month, where typically, and of course you're offsetting what you would be paying to the utility. So maybe you'd be paying the utility $600 or $700 for that energy usage. In this case, you'd be paying this third party a flat rate of less than that, $500, $400, $300, something like that. So there's some clear benefits to this. I would say a con to this type of approach is that it's not tied to production. So if for whatever reason it goes haywire, you still have to make that monthly payment, and you really have to stay on top of watching the production of the array in case it does go south for a month or two. Then you're on top of it, and you can get that third party out there to fix it. Let's talk about PACE, moving into the more of the commercial side of things. PACE, property assessed clean energy. This is a great way to finance energy efficiency projects as well as renewable energy projects. It's available for anybody except residential at this point. Residential and government is not a great PACE is not a great tool for them, but commercial entities, nonprofits, faith communities, multifamily housing providers, PACE can be used for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. And what's unique here is that it's repaid as a separate item on the property tax bill. So if you're a commercial entity, you'll get your property taxes, your property tax bill. It'll show what you owe to the city, to the county, and then there'll be a separate line item for your PACE assessment. It works exactly the same way as a street assessment or a sidewalk assessment. Nonprofits don't pay property taxes, but nonprofits do pay assessments. So if you're a faith community, for example, or any sort of nonprofit, you'll get a tax bill, property tax bill in the spring and in the fall, and it'll show 0 for property taxes owed, and then again a separate line item to pay back that assessment. There's always an energy audit component to these projects. So the idea here is that these projects are always cash positive for that business, for that nonprofit. You get the energy audit, it'll say if you do these projects, you'll save $10,000 on your utility bill. The assessment will always be lower than that. You save 10 grand through this project, your assessment will be $8,000, for example. So I mentioned these are great for energy efficiency projects, for renewable energy projects, but also EVs. EV infrastructure can be paid for through PACE assessments as well. And they're growing in popularity. The Minnesota legislature authorized PACE maybe a decade ago or so, give or take. And since that time, I will tell you, Olmsted County was one of the very first to make PACE happen. And there's been a number of projects in the county. It's kind of been bubbling up from southern Minnesota, heading on north. There's been, as you can see, well, that says 300 projects. I actually heard the other day it's closer to 400 projects. This map is on the CERT's website. It shows the dots in blue are projects that have been completed, PACE projects funded through the St. Paul Port Authority, which administers the PACE program in Olmsted County and in many other counties. And then the yellow dots, there's a separate PACE program just for 18 counties in the southwest part of the state that's administered through the rural through the RMEB, Rural Minnesota Energy Board. It goes from the South Dakota border all the way over close to Olmsted. Mauer County is where it stops. And it's just for PACE projects, just for projects in those 18 counties. So if you're interested in PACE and you're in Rochester, that would be through the St. Paul Port Authority, which they call their MinPACE program. It's been a huge success. As I said, now getting closer to 400 projects completed, several hundred million worth of project costs, lots of savings for these businesses, nonprofits that have done PACE projects. 500 billion BTUs saved annually. And if you're like me, you're kind of scratching your head about, gosh, what does that mean? That's the equivalent of 16,000 homes, what they would use annually for electricity, or 14 million LED light bulbs. So pretty significant and growing on a daily basis. The project process is pretty straightforward. First of all, that local government, there is a role for the local government. So that's already taken care of. And in this case, Olmsted County has had it in place for probably 5 years, give or take. So you're ready to rock and roll there. There's a short application to the St. Paul Port Authority, to their MinPACE program, maybe 7 pages, pretty much name, rank, serial number information, a little bit about what the project's all about. You do need that energy audit, and those entities that I mentioned earlier qualify for PACE. And if you have a mortgage on the property, you need to get their sign off. So you need lender consent for the mortgage and submit some financial information. Loan is approved within a matter of weeks through the St. Paul Port Authority, and you're off and running. You can hire whoever you wish to get that energy efficiency EV project or renewable energy project completed. The Hyatt House, you may recognize this one. This is just a conceptual drawing, but I understand it's built in Rochester and close to the Mayo. And so the point I want to make here is that traditionally PACE has been used for energy efficiency projects for efficiency of renewable energy projects on existing buildings, but it can be used on brand new buildings. And it's an incentive for that brand new building to put in really energy efficient components to, in this case, a hotel. And I think there's been, if memory serves, there's been three hotels in Rochester have utilized PACE. I see Kevin shaking his head. That's good. And so more and more new construction projects are utilizing property assessed clean energy, which is great. So it can be used for big hotels with 170 rooms. There's the First National Bank skyscraper in downtown St. Paul, with the iconic #1 on top, has utilized PACE for like a $6 million project, all the way down to Paul's Handyman Service. And I imagine it's just Paul that works at Paul's Handyman Service in Red Wing. And Paul put on a modest sized solar array, 10 kW. And what I like about this project is the quote from Paul. You know, if you're a small business owner, you don't want to get tied up too much in extensive grants that take forever to put together, and you're not even sure you're going to get it. This is really simple for that small business owner to move forward. So whether or not we're talking about PACE or these other loan programs or rebates or these energy efficiency things or guides and tools, again, you're going to find tons of information on the Clean Energy Resource Team's website. So you can find it right there. And I encourage you to check that out. And you can kick it old school by picking up your phone and giving me a call. And again, there's Chris Meyer, who may be on the webinar here today. Chris is a fantastic resource for Southeast Minnesota. Chris is our regional coordinator and has been doing that job for several years. And so I encourage you to contact Chris as well. That's what I got for you. Happy to take a crack at any questions that you may have. Kevin, how am I doing? And one of my neighbors just started to mow their yard. So sorry if you're picking up a little lawn mowing noise.
This is great, Pete. Thank you. Do you mind taking the slides down? We can
yeah,
maybe open
absolutely.
up if anyone in the room has any questions, maybe I'll give you a second to think of a couple. Pete, I was particularly interested in the solar lease agreement option. We know here in Rochester through our conversations with our PU and SIMPA that power purchase agreements are not, since that's basically paying for power and the utility has that right here in the city. But I see that personally as like a pretty good pathway for businesses in particular who don't want to put any money down to help facilitate a solar installation. Is that kind of a fair way to view it? It's another pathway besides the PPA that
it's another pathway. Yep, it's another pathway to put to get these projects completed. And so I'm encouraged to hear that might be an option for entities in Rochester. It's not uncommon. I'll tell you that it's not uncommon across the nation. It's a known entity. It's I would say across the nation and in Minnesota, more people are, where allowed, more people are doing PPAs because they're paying for the power that is produced. On top of that, if they're putting a 40 kW or 100 kW array on their roof, they're paying for just what that array creates. Mm-hmm. And through that, there's an incentive for that third party to keep it operational because they are paid based on what it produces. But in this case, solar leases very much may be an option for people.
Yeah. I've also seen some agreements that have had those in them where they require certain performance to be met.
Exactly.
They're like 80% of their
80%, 80 or 85% performance guarantee. Yep. That's a really good point. Yep. The other thing I wanted to mention, not related to solar leases, but I did want to mention that one cool thing about solar and Rochester is that there's a grant program for solar for schools, and 2 Rochester schools have applied and are kind of in the middle of the process of being approved for solar for schools. I think, that's great. On an elementary, I think either 2 elementary schools or an elementary school and a middle school. So that's encouraging. So hopefully you'll see some 40 kW arrays on top of the schools in the next year or so. And what's neat about that is they have to incorporate the array into the curriculum. It's one of the grant requirements. So we'll have Rochester young people learning about the importance of all sorts of energy things, but renewable energy in particular. And they'll be able to see it. Which is really cool.
Thanks, Pete. Anyone else have questions for Pete while we have him here? I guess it was just a perfectly clear presentation, Pete. No questions at all from the group.
Or I just bored people to death.
The two, I don't know.
One of the two.
Well, yeah, I don't want to keep you here, Pete. I guess if folks have questions in the last couple of seconds here, feel free to chime in or type them in the chat. But otherwise, Pete, this is a really helpful kind of collection of resources, tools, and other information that I think will help people kind of think through this this opportunity, both either for their business or for their home. So I really appreciate you being here, talking a little about the solar lease agreements as an opportunity too. But yeah, overall, this is great, and really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Happy to present, and whenever Kevin and Lauren say jump, I say how high. So that's how we roll.
Well, we appreciate that too.
I applaud all of the things that that the city of Rochester has done and has in the works. You're really great leaders, and look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll get you all the information so that you can send it out to all the folks.
So appreciate it very much.